Guys, today's games are all unique, each entirely different than another, all 10 special in their own rights. But let me show you, rather than just tell. Eternam is a futuristic sci-fi point-and-click adventure game, and it was made by one Hubert Chardot, better known for his Shadow of the Comet and Prisoner of Ice games. A very Lovecraftian games and totally unlike what we'll talk about today. Eternam places you in shoes of Officer Don Jones of the United Forces of Orion, who is starting his vacations on holiday planet Eternam, which is known for being a planet-sized amusement park divided into a set of smaller islands, each representing a different time period in Earth's history. When you arrive, however, and change into a suitable for the first of the time period's costume of barbarian, you learn that the planet has been taken over by Mikhail Nuke, your longtime nemesis. And believe it or not, but the story and setting of Eternam is sorta loosely based on the movie Westworld, its sequel Future World, and later TV series Beyond Westworld. No relation to our recent HBO's Westworld. No, scratch that. HBO's Westworld is based on the old one too, but other than that, the game has nothing to do with the series released decades later. Anyway, cause as usual I'm driving off the path, Don Jones, being where he is, has to navigate Eternam and its 5 islands till he finally gets to the Nuke's lair and defeats him, reducing the story to its most basic, that is. Most of the game is set on a side view 2D background, same as majority of adventure titles are, with some overworld sections played in 3D view, where you can actually be attacked and have to defend yourself by shooting at the approaching enemies. When the game released initially in 1992, it lacked mouse support, and all the commands had to be issued by icons at the bottom of the screen using keyboard, which was more than annoying if you ask me. But a year later, along with the fully voiced CD release, came along awaited and desperately needed mouse support. And finally, Eternam was playable. I mean, technically it could be played before, but not by me, I had no patience for it. Anyway, I don't want to blame the control scheme of the original release for it, but Eternam never really gained any wider popularity, making it a rather obscure and little-known title. Which is a shame, cause other than the aforementioned issue, it's actually pretty fun to play and follow its perhaps not too sophisticated, but otherwise captivating plot. Presentation-wise, the game is excellent, perhaps not on the level of LucasArts' same year's Day of the Tentacle, cause hardly anything could compare to their games, but it's beautiful. It features lush backgrounds, masterwork sprite animation and appropriate sound design. Not to mention totally unexpected 3D first-person sections. Damn it, I did mention them. Oh well, it is what it is. If you're a fan of adventure games and somehow managed to skip Eternam in 92-93, grab the CD release and give it a go. It'll be a time well spent, I promise. Fatal Fumes is a multiplayer top-down sharer arcade racer. It features 35 different built-in tracks, 12 vehicles and ability to race against 11 opponents. There are no weapons, power-ups or add-ons in it though, it's all about racing. About taking corners the best, most optimal way and pushing to the finish line before anyone else. It's worth pointing out that while Fatal Fumes may not enchant with its graphics, especially in 1996, when low-res 2D presentation was slowly becoming obsolete and everyone was either turning towards high-res or full 3D, often both, but technical deficiencies aside, what makes Fatal Fumes worth a look are two things. First of all, included level editor, which not only allows you to create the levels of your heart's desire, making them ice, desert or countryside themed, and adding various features or hazards like jumps or puddles of water. But also, and that's the biggest feature of the editor I can think of, not found in many other similar tools for the time, was the 3 levels of editing, meaning that the tracks could have drivable surfaces at 3 different heights, effectively creating tracks with roads that could go one over another. It may not seem like a lot now in 2024, but in 1996 it was the bomb, as your creations could have additional depth to them. And yes, terrible pun intended. The second thing that makes Fatal Fumes worth a look is its playability. Yeah, it's simple and yeah, you can hardly overtake the opponent by screen slam the way you could in Micro Machines for points, but the racing itself, provided you're playing against another person, is just fun. And that's the most we can hope to get from any game. Fatal Fumes is not a great looking title. The sounds are there and are okay, but also nothing out of ordinary, and the CPU drivers are nothing more than you'd expect from any average racer. But if you get a friend involved and there's 2 of you racing on tracks of your own creation, it's easily a game to take up a whole afternoon. I always root for the underdog, especially when I'm 1-2, but also when someone else is. Whether it's real life, movies, TV series or even games, I'm always hopeful for the least feasible to become the protagonist, to save the day, to get the girl, or solve the mystery, or even just to succeed. Whatever applies in a particular situation. Hard to tell why, but I like to think that even the least likely can have a chance to win, regardless of how low this chance may be. So when I heard of Fatman the Caped Consumer, Not only I was instantly interested, but it also was seemingly a spoof of a superhero game, which is another thing that I enjoy. So, was I right to be interested, to hope that this would be a fun title? Well, let's see. First of all, Fatman is only a little overweight, and calling him a Fatman is appropriate as calling someone with a mustache a beardman would be. Secondly, it's a 2D action platformer, so a game in the genre I quite enjoy, even if it was become borderline extinct in the next few years just to be resurrected years later with an indie gaming scene. And thirdly, presentation, if you look at it when still, it's actually pretty damn good. Colorful, even if devoid of parallax backgrounds, using large and detailed, very comic book-like in their design sprites, it just looks charming and fun. So on the face value, Fatman could be incredible. It is composed out of 7 stages, each ending with an epic huge boss fight, and each having you basically devour a certain number of foods that's required for the door to the next one to open. That's pretty much it, you're controlling a snack-munching superhero. Story-wise, your wife has been kidnapped by the evil corporation Syndicate, which is an obvious play on the words Fin and Syndicate, so an organized evil entity focused on ridding the world of all that are non-conformist in terms of their weight, at least when compared to the company's beauty standards. There's clearly some kind of a message here, but I'm not sure it's a good one, and if I even want to talk about it at all. Anyway, since your ball and chain requires saving, and you're the superhero we deserve, and they are willing to trade her for so-called duplicator device, along with its full documentation no less, you put on your blue tights, mask and cape and head off to rescue her. Each of the 7 stages is pretty big and they're filled with various enemies to the brim. So rats, birds, bats and any and all kinds of seemingly peaceful creatures all turned against you. Fortunately, you have an arsenal of various attacks to use against them. Some utilize your tummy, burps, or even landing on them butt first, so if you're careful and persevere, you should be able to save your boo. Touching spikes, water, fire, or the enemy in any other way than while trying to annihilate it will cost you your life. Which, given your superhero status, is that odd, but since you're you, it's not gonna happen, right? Fatman, with its super colorful presentation, decent sound design, bit subpar story, and an impressive range of moves for the platformer, could be a hit. But something, somehow, along the way went wrong, and it ended up being an average at best game. No better than hundreds of other generic platformers. Is it fun to play and complete despite that though? Hell yeah it is. Though I gotta warn you that it gets repeatable quite fast and the feeling prevails all the way to the end. Oh, and some of you may have noticed already, but the footage used is actually from Amiga's version. But they both look and play near identical, and there's none for PC anywhere, so yeah. First Queen 4 originated in 1994 on PC-98, a Japanese-only computer. A year later, somehow, for whatever the reason, it managed to land on PC. Given the source machine, very limited, practically non-existent distribution and advertising, it became instantly obscure. While the fact that it only released in Japanese, so one of the world's easiest to learn languages, may also have been a contributing factor to that. And yeah, I know what I said. It's sarcasm. I've tried tackling with the language along twice, first around 14 years ago and second time 3-4 years back, and despite having built a very solid base, I never went past asking where's McDonald's or the library. And only one of the two may ever be useful to me if/when I go there. And it's not gonna be a library. I am not planning on eating in McD's there either, so perhaps both are as useless. Whatever, let's focus on the game here. So, First Queen 4 is a top-down real-time fantasy strategy and role-playing mixture taking place in the land of Low Greece. The land that was peacefully inhabited by elves, dwarves and all kinds of other magical creatures. Eventually, however, humans arrived. And while for years they managed to coexist with others in peace, humans are humans, and eventually the disagreements led them to split into multiple smaller factions. Factions that eventually became separate nations and kingdoms. One of them, Barcia, was a small northern kingdom whose king Zenel was in constant crippling worry of being conquered by the others, even if nothing pointed towards the possibility. So, eventually he invited a dark magician Zone to help him. His help, however, while making Barcia's armies immensely stronger, also led to onset of King's insanity and closely following it overwhelming need of conquest. So, he sent his armies in series of preemptive sudden attacks, conquering few others before he could be conquered himself. Applying the best defense is a good offense tactics. Witnessing King's rapidly progressive madness, a young warrior named Ares, along with his friends, tried to assassinate the king. Sadly, he was not only stopped in his attempt, but also imprisoned. Jailed Ares was then saved by a mysterious magician and given the quest of uniting all the other races and nations to stop the onslaught of the Mad King Zenel's armies. Now, isn't it an epic start as compared to other games we've spoke about today so far? As compared to previous games in the series, games that never released on PC mind you, First Queen 4 puts much more focus on strategy rather than RPG. The armies move simultaneously, they can be split into smaller ones, joined into larger, and they're commanded and fight in real time too. You can use diplomacy to make arrangements with sovereign cities and even to hire some of the defeated soldiers after battles. Presentation-wise, First Queen 4 looks pretty decent, very JRPG-like, even if it's more on the strategy side. Sounds are good too, though not great, and overall the game is a pretty fun experience if you can read the language. If not, then, well, carry on to the next title in the video. Extase, which is written way different than you think, is a standalone version of Brain Bowler puzzle minigame from an earlier Purple Saturn Day game, extracted, expanded and playable in 1 or 2 player mode. It is also a cerebral sci-fi action puzzler that you will either fall in love with or hate. It depicts a huge female android head in the middle of the screen and series of network wires connected to it, buttons and switches symmetrically on right and left. The goal is to restore all sensory functions to the android, and each level has a different set of them to work with. The game is always played in 2-player mode, either against a friend or CPU. So you'll be guiding electrical pulses through wires, after these wires have been woken up, so to say, that is, and you'll have to set switches in correct positions, then reactivate the wires, all the while making sure that the electrical sparks wouldn't blow the fuses, as this may require regenerating, slowing you down considerably. And it's not something we'd want in a competitive game. You can also steal opponents' fuses if you manage to, but that's more of an advanced gameplay concept rather than something for your first few attempts. Same as summoning sparks on the opponent's side to keep him busy, or jolting opponent's control cursor so that it would be more tough for him to act. As the android is gradually reactivated, it starts showing different facial expressions and emotions as visual indicator of progress. Now, I realize that all I've said to this point sounds ridiculous and seems to make not much sense whatsoever, but it's only partly fault on my side. The thing with Extase is that it's same as The Matrix was. So as much no one can really be told what The Matrix is and they just have to see it for themselves, no one can be told what Extase is, they just have to play it for themselves. So, let me leave you with this. Whichever the pill you would pick when deciding about Matrix, if you like puzzle games at least a bit, especially those action-oriented and sci-fi themed, try Extase out. Give it a game or two, and if you don't like it at the end of it, move to something else. Though I have a feeling that you may find it to be quite an odd quirky fun pickle. First of all I will be able to show you about Forgotten Saga are the screenshots and maybe a part of an intro animation, as there's no footage for the game anywhere online. That's how obscure it is. But it may be worth listening about it anyway, as it's a pretty interesting title. Also, and I think it comes without saying, I've never played it myself, so everything I'll tell you will be based on research and digging of all kinds I've done, learning anything I could about it. First of all, it's a Korean top-down turn-based fantasy role-playing set in the same world as Astonisha story, and serving as a side tale to the original. Both games' plots aren't intertwined in any way, however, and only share one character between them, Fatman. Forgotten Saga tells a tale of a group of 4 friends, adventurers for hire even, and how they arrive in a quiet town of Gorax, in Nubroyer province, in Kingdom of Latane, on an Assyrian continent. A lot of names, right? A lot of weird names even. But if you're familiar with the Saga series, you should know at least some of them. So, our 4 heroes managed to do one job for a millionaire so far, helping him recover a vast part of his wealth and being generously rewarded for it. Hope that all their jobs from then on will be as profitable. It doesn't look like it though, so they agree to take a simple job requiring them to deliver a letter to a very particular recipient. It all goes sideways, however, and they are captured and imprisoned by the authorities under a false pretense. The only chance for their escape is a mysterious young woman whom they will help foiling the evil plans of the governor of Nubrier. The game starts with the main character creator, which surprisingly works same as the classic Ultimas did, so asks you a series of questions and determines a class for you based on the answers. When that's done, you pick 3 of your companions from a variety of typical fantasy classes for a total of 4. It's worth noting that you have 2 extra empty slots for temporary party members that will be joining you in different parts of your adventure. Interestingly enough, unlike most other JRPGs, if I can even call a Korean game a JRPG, Forgotten Saga is much less linear. Most towns and cities offer quite a few different side quests, many of which rely on your character's classes or even entire party's reputation. Even more so, the main quest is not even immediately available and you have to complete series of smaller tasks to reveal it. Which in my books is an excellent idea, as it allows you not only to familiarize yourself with the inner gameplay mechanics, but also the atmosphere and tone of the world the adventure is set in. Especially that you'll quickly learn that many of your choices, even those that appear to be seemingly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, may be quite impactful and change the outcome of whole quest lines. That kind of freedom, unseen in Eastern games back then, brought a whole slew of issues, namely bugs. Bugs here, bugs there, bugs everywhere. And if there's one thing the very few who played the initial release of Forgotten Saga had to say about it, it's how bug-ridden it was, often near unplayable because of them. Sure, the game was re-released a year later for Windows, patched, and saw a steady release of additional fixes for a short while, but not only it didn't manage to regain the faith gamers put in it, but was never also debugged in full, and even in the final version, some small issues prevailed. That said, it was at least playable, and its vast content and lore deep world was finally ready to be explored. So, if you're into anything I just said, definitely give it a go. Eye of Horus is an Egyptian-themed action arcade shooter platformer in which you play as the titular Horus. King Osiris's brother Set is your uncle. Consumed with jealousy, he kills your father Osiris, dismembers his body, and scatters the 7 pieces of the corpse throughout the ancient tomb. I really don't want to swear in these videos, but that's a dick move if you ask me. He kills his brother, then cuts him into pieces and then spreads those pieces all around the tomb. Do you know how much work and effort something like that requires? You will soon, when you play the game, cause that tomb is gigantic. I mean, it shows either a weirdly displaying its self-dedication to the craft of murder or incredibly deep-set madness. Probably both, if I had to guess. Anyway, your task is to find all 7 pieces and reassemble Osiris so that together you could defeat and vanquish Set. Interestingly enough, instead of jumping, you can turn into a hawk and fly around shooting, defeating any and all enemies that you may face. There are over 30 different amulets scattered around the tomb, and each of them grants you another power, another useful skill in completing your quest. You can only collect and carry 7 items at a time, so you'll have to learn which amulet does what, so that you could only hold the best. Personally, I would suggest making sure to always have place for one that offers map and extra weapons if free space allows for it. The very best amulets to have, however, are these that summon other gods, as their powers are most useful and prominent. It's good to have the amulet of Isis, for instance, as it summons her, and she'll take a piece of your father's body to the burial chamber in preparation for resurrection. And since you can only carry one piece of Osiris at once, you'll have to summon Isis often. The rest of the amulets I'll let you discover all by yourself, as they're a part of charm of the game. Chambers that the tomb is built of are connected via lifts, which is an odd game design choice given it's supposed to take place in the ancient times, but whatever. You can use them to move between the levels, but to do so, you will always have to revert to your human form, which actually slows the pace of the game down considerably. Graphics-wise, Eye of Horus may not compare favorably to its Amiga or even Atari ST versions, but by 1989 it looked pretty decent on PC too, even if it sounded terrible and could really use a complete sound redesign. All in all, Eye of Horus, while not groundbreaking, is pretty decent and interesting and fun to go through if you like those kinds of platformer shooter mixes, especially unusually themed ones. There's easily over 10 DOS games named Frankenstein or having the name be a part of their titles. And sadly, most are not very good. Keeping with the traditions of the naming, this Frankenstein is not great either. I mean, it may not be terrible, but it's not spectacular in any way imaginable. It's average at best and, well, not even that at worst. It was released as shareware, only in Europe and in a very limited manner, basically killing any of its chances for success, mistakenly giving players a chance to sample it before purchase, and most that did never pulled the trigger on a full release. Frankenstein is a timed scrolling adventure platformer in which you play as Igor Woodenhead, Dr. Frankenstein's servant, and are tasked with locating and bringing him appropriate body parts and tools to create the infamous Frankenstein's monster. And yes, Frankenstein himself was not a monster at all. It's a common misconception many make when talking about the creature. The game world is divided into 4 differently themed locations: the village, cemetery, dungeon and castle, and all of these are full of peasants and animals that are all out there to get you. Though full may be a bit of an overstatement, there's not that many really. Fortunately, it's not one-hit kill kind of a game, and you have a health bar that depletes by a little when in contact with the enemy, when falling from high ground, or when touching spikes. Well, whenever the death will come, at least it won't be instantaneous, right? Naturally, you can defend yourself against the former, jumping on enemies' heads Mario style. It's perhaps an odd choice in an adventure platformer, rather than the one-way running one like from Ancient Mario, but whatever. It is what it is. You can carry up to 2 items at a time, so reassembling the monster will take a while. And close contact with blonde-haired women will replenish your energy. Because of course it will, same as it would in real life. In 1990s at least. Frankenstein is not very good. I mean, it's not unplayable or anything, it's just not much fun. And if a game is not fun, it may have very well not existed at all. Play it or not, your call, I wouldn't recommend it. Released 2 years after it originally dropped like a meteorite on a beat-style by then beat-em-up/brawler market on the Amiga, bringing very junky and rough, but so fresh tasting addition to the genre, Franko the Crazy Revenge is just that. A simple, very basic story of a revenge told via side-scrolling breaking of noses, kicking of asses, and a general whoopassery. I'm not sure if it's the best genre to tell any stories, but it's definitely a good vessel for fun action-packed romp. It's a game for 1 or 2 players, in which you can play either as Franko or Alex, a pair of buff dudes living in Stettin, Poland during early 90s, in a time when country just freed itself, nay, crawled from underneath a communist Soviet's crusty heel and slowly started exploring what it meant to be truly free and moist. Not necessarily in the most reasonable way, but after years of hardships, it's difficult not to occasionally choke on freedoms you indulge yourself in like a malnourished child. It was a transitional period that was important to all Poles and led to years of progress. Our hero's friend was killed by local mob stags, so Franko and Alex, as you do, departed on a bloody trail of revenge. And it's literally bloody, as what the game is best known for is its brutal, gore-filled depiction of fights. Franko the Crazy Revenge is a standard and not too creative, at least plot-wise, beat-em-up, but the omnipresent brutality alone made it rather well known in Poland on the Amiga. On PC, it was DOA, and sadly remained unknown even despite rather fun, if not multiple playthroughs worthy gameplay. As a matter of fact, I'd say that it's a 2 playthrough kind of a game, once alone and once with a friend, preferably over drinks. Gambys is one of the first Portuguese DOS games and an ecological themed puzzler. Nope, no, it only pretends to be a puzzler. In reality, it's an arcade game that uses puzzling to tie all the arcade bits together, if that even makes sense. Anyway, it tells a tale of imminent ecological catastrophe created by humans, so something we should be very familiar with today, and small creatures called Gambys, which are the only ones capable of saving the planet, as they possess a magical crystal that contains memories of a clean planet within it, of all plants and animals and how Earth used to be before we destroyed it. The images have to be released from the crystal to the outside world to purify and transform it into what it once was. Over time, however, the images got distorted and damaged and need to be cleaned and repaired before they could be released. Gameplay revolves around cleaning the images of the distortion, mainly by using various Gambys and their special skills. So Gambys Wizard, for instance, depending on which colored potion you will drop on him, will cast different helpful spell. Gambys Mover places indicated tiles in the correct location on the board, Gambys Finder shows you the exact location of each piece of a puzzle, Gambys Diffuser removes bombs that otherwise cover the pieces of the image when they explode, and Gambys Knight can be sent off to fight evil creatures that try to prevent your progress. Naturally, there's few more of these Gambys in the game, each special and each having a different function to perform. Utilizing their skills, same way you'd use skills that you could assign to lemmings, you have to restore all the images to save the Earth. Unfortunately, Gambys failed to gain popularity and traction, forever remaining obscure, and if I was to wager a guess why, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's one of those games that can't be told about, it can't be shown even, and when you play it, you also have to give it a lot of time to grow on you, to unlock all of its features, to start making sense and eventually begin being fun. Yep, going past the first few levels is not enough in this one. You actually have to give it more, be patient, all to learn how enjoyable it can be. And when you get to that point, then despite the ecological theme and a bit childish presentation, I can pretty much guarantee you'll get addicted to its fun formula, same way you did to Lemmings in 1991. Really cool games we've had today, didn't we? I mean, sure, not all were great, but each was interesting in one way or another. Did you find any you'd like to try out? Or perhaps you knew of them already? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. Smash them if you have to, it helps more than you could ever know. Also, I would like to thank you and all my amazing Patreon and YouTube members for helping this channel keep going. And last but definitely not least, I would like to thank all the wonderful folks who record and upload playthroughs, let's plays and other retro-centric videos here on YouTube, because they help to preserve the games that would have otherwise been long forgotten. So thank you.